Good afternoon from New York City. I'm Joel Natividad, and welcome to episode 2 of the U.S. Open Knowledge Network's monthly webinar on all things open knowledge, open data that is useful, usable, and used.
And I want to say aloha to everybody. It's 9 a.m. in Hawaii, and my name is Bert Lum, and we're fortunate to have 3 great guest speakers, and of course 2 thought leader organizations on open data. We've got Data.gov and the Sunlight Foundation, and of course it's really timely because this weekend is Open Data Day. So we have a lot of great content and announcements, so let's keep going.
Thanks, Bert. Let's see. So here's a quick overview of the agenda for your reference. After some quick intros and housekeeping, we'll start with Data.gov and giving an overview of the latest developments on the National Data Portal, which uses CCAN, one of the marquee projects of the Open Knowledge Foundation.
And of course, we've got a quick overview of what's happening this weekend, the 7th International Open Data Day. And we'll hear also from the Sunlight Foundation about the relaunch of the U.S. City Open Data Census and what folks can do to help the census during the Open Data Day.
And we want this to be a conversation, so we save a lot of time for Q&A, and please feel free and don't be shy, enter those questions.
And of course, we also got a quick update on the U.S. Open Knowledge Network and something happening with the folks over at Open Knowledge International. So we'll keep you guys posted on that one.
So some quick housekeeping. I'm sure everybody has done webinars before. The only thing I wanted to call out is on the right-hand side of your screen there's a Q&A section. So please don't be shy. We save a lot of time for Q&A and just enter your questions. Thanks.
So real quick, you know, we've scheduled about an hour for this webinar, so I don't want to get into I guess maybe I'll take up about half an hour of that for my introduction. No, I'm just kidding. So I do definitely want to thank Joel for organizing this monthly webinar. I think you put you did a lot of work in this and got some great speakers. So I'm really looking forward to it. And just a quick way of background. Again, my name is Bert Lum, and I have been sort of holding the torch for the open knowledge in the U.S. I'm one of the Open Knowledge ambassadors since 2014. Also, I founded the Code for Hawaii Brigade, and wanted to kind of keep the open data effort going. So started a 501c3 nonprofit called Hawaii Open Data. So we've been working with the government on trying to get more data published, both on the city and county as well as the state of Hawaii. So that's kind of what I do for the open data side, and then I'm also employed over at the state of Hawaii as the broadband, broadband officer.
Awesome, thanks, Bert. And I'm Joel Natividad. I've been doing open data for almost 8 years now. Starting here in New York City when Mayor Bloomberg was here, the NYC Big Apps, and that's how my open data adventure started. I sit on the CCAN steering group, and in my day job, I work with OpenGov, a GovTech company helping governments across the U.S. And you'll notice today that we're adopting a bit of more of a conversational format. This was inspired by what Bert has been doing for the past 10 years. You know, he hosts a podcast with Hawaii Public Radio, and he's just shy of the 500 episode you've been doing for 10 years. Bert, so I took some tips from Bert and we put this together. So yes.
I thought you were going to say that my character, I'm shy.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I've been doing time goes by so fast. So I've been doing this radio show on Hawaii Public Radio, and we just did our 496th episode yesterday, which was Wednesday, and wow, time goes by really fast.
And hopefully we'll hit that milestone with this webinar series, Bert.
Oh yeah, I'll be 90 years old when we're in 10 years when we get our 10-year anniversary. Okay, so we got three great speakers today. We've got from Data.gov, Philip Ashlock and Juan Kim. Phil is the chief architect of Data.gov since 2013, and Juan is the Data.gov's program director, and serving in that role since 2012. And before that, Kim was the program manager over at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and for 6 years did a stint over at the Department of Homeland Security, the 911 Commission, the House, the Senate, and the FBI. Wow, Juan, I mean, you've been all over the federal government.
Yep. And also with us from the Sunlight Foundation, we're honored to have Alex Dodds to tell us about the relaunched U.S. City Open Data Census. Alex is Sunlight's Open City storyteller. And before that, Alex worked at various nonprofits in D.C., including Smart Growth America, Change to Win, and Walmart Watch. So welcome, everyone, and thanks again for accepting our invitation. So quickly, I wanted to do a quick recap of the first episode. So that was a month ago. It's amazing how time flies. And I just wanted to acknowledge that it was really would not have been possible without the help of a lot of people. It started out as a New Year's resolution, and in less than a month, we were able to spin it off. Shout outs to a lot of people at Open Knowledge and BERT for keeping the torch lit, and the WPRDC team for agreeing to be our inaugural speaker last month. So thanks, everyone. So we are archiving everything, the webinar, the slide, the survey, everything. So I invite you to pay a visit to discuss.okfn.org to review all this great content.
Yes, and going forward, we'll keep posting all the webinars on the forum as we keep working on rejuvenating the U.S. node of the Open Knowledge Network, and I would encourage everyone to join in on the mailing list. So that's it for housekeeping, and without further delay, I'd like to turn it over to the Data.gov team, Phil, Juan, and we'll give you a quick introduction at the top of the webinar, so you can tell us more about yourself, since we kind of abbreviated our our introductions of you guys. Go ahead, Phil.
Sure. Actually, it might be easier if you give me control, and that way, if I shift over to just show something on the website, and Phil and I are in the same room, so you won't have to. You won't have to do this more than once.
Okay. I'm turning it over. You should have control now.
Okay. Let me just hit. Okay. Yes.
That's behind you.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. We were adding some slides to this. The last minute. Okay, here we go. So let me just say who we are. This is Juan Kim with Data.gov at GSA, and
I'm Phil Ashlock, also with Data.gov at GSA.
And he's also the acting lead of the portfolio, where the Data.gov program sits within our organization in GSA. And our total team right now, and for a while, is small. It's 3 of us on the government side, and we have some support contractors. We have one person who helps us with some of our public feedback, and actually you're getting us at a time where it's been a little bit of a challenge in that we normally have a technical support contractor that's equivalent to about 5 full-time employees providing technical support. And we've had some delays on the contracting side, so we've been without technical support for several weeks, and we're just trying to get ourselves back on track. So to the extent that you've been paying attention at all to our GitHub repositories, where we do all of our work in the open, any sort of, delays in showing activity for new capabilities is due to that, but we're trying to have that rectified pretty soon. I told you where we are in the General Services Administration. We're in the part of GSA. It's called the Technology Transformation Services, and you may have also heard about it recently because the Office of 18F has been, doing a lot of incredible work and getting a lot of attention. Is also part of the larger organization that we're a part of. You may know about Data.gov's origins, but if you don't, it has been around since May of 2009, and it's the United States government's federal open data site. It originated from a presidential memorandum in January of 2009 on open government, and follow-up to that, there was a OMB policy on open government and open data that required the creation of Data.gov, and GSA was chosen to implement it in a matter of weeks. So in May of 2009 is when Data.gov went online as the first national open data site and catalog. And it, at that time, it was a different model in that, skipping around a little bit, in that we had a central Data.gov program management office, and where agencies were directed to provide metadata for their data sets, and then it was added to the Data.gov catalog at that time, in a centrally managed way, with the program management office here adding data sets to the Data.gov catalog as they came in. It was and still is, of course, a metadata catalog. Our focus is on providing a catalog of the government's open data sets. The focus is not on data set hosting. So most of the data sets, if you discover them on Data.gov, are still hosted at the agency's at the respective agency website. Sorry to jump around a little bit, going back to this first slide. So the big change in Data.gov was in 2013, where we had a further executive order that was specifically open data, not just open government, and the executive order was on making open and machine readable the new default for government information. The executive order was followed by a more specific policy from the Office of Management and Budget that required agencies to not just contribute metadata to Data.gov, but rather keep a comprehensive inventory of their metadata, of all of their data assets in a specified format, and following a metadata schema that was common to all of the agencies. So the switch then was from having sort of ad hoc submissions from agencies of metadata. The policy required the agencies to maintain and create and maintain this comprehensive inventory that would then be automatically harvested by the Data.gov catalog. So that's how Data.gov appears today through this new, through that updated version, launched in 2014. And that was also when the catalog was updated to become a CCAN catalog. I think there are some metrics later on, but here you can see the breakdown of data sets currently in the Data.gov catalog. You'll see that there is also some state and local data sets represented, and that happened in large part after we switched over to this harvesting model under the open data policy, it made it very easy to incorporate state and local data catalogs that if they provided some minimal required metadata, we could add them as a harvest source like we do with the federal agencies. And again, we don't have authority over state and local entities, but, to the extent that they ask to be included, or sometimes we discover that there's a new state and local site for open data, we'll approach them. And again, if, with some minimal effort, if they provide that core metadata, we're, happy to add them to the Data.gov catalog. So that happens on a pretty regular basis. In the next one, you can see the breakout by agency, and you'll see that there are a few agencies that are the primary source of the bulk of the number of data sets, and it's also most of the data sets are still geospatial data sets, also make up the majority of the data sets as well.
I think it's about 60% of all the data sets. And actually, so you see the three big agencies, NOAA, Department of Interior, and NASA. And the fourth one there is actually NSGIC, which is the National States Geographic Information Consortium, which itself is sort of an aggregator of state-level GIS data.
The other change that happened when we became a CCAN catalog in 2014 was a consolidation of that harvesting for not just Data.gov, but geoplatform.gov, which you may be familiar with, which is the website of the Federal Geographic Data Committee. And so even the geoplatform.gov is a separate site as far as the mechanism of harvesting the data sets. That's common between us and geoplatform.gov. The other site that came about then was this collaborative site called Project Open Data. What the policy, is sort of recognized that this was a new requirement being put on agencies to, develop these metadata inventories and following the schema that has been arrived at after a lot of collaboration with the agencies and some outside groups as well. So there needed to be a site to provide tools, guidance, other resources. So that's something that sort of came online with the open data policy and the new version of Data.gov as well. And this is just a screenshot of, one of the key links on Project Open Data, of course, is the metadata schema that is common to all of the federal agencies providing their metadata. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
This is we would typically just refer to this as the Project Open Data metadata schema, but it's been through a couple of versions. So when we initially transitioned with the new policy in 2013 and this decentralized federated harvesting model, there was an initial version of the schema, which was somewhat loosely based on the DCAT, data catalog vocabulary standard that was being developed, I think, partly through some of the work from the Open Knowledge Foundation, but also through a W3C working group. But it hadn't actually been finalized when our policy was first finalized. So we sort of had attempted to keep them in sync as possible, as much as possible initially, but ultimately we went through another revision of the schema about a year or so after. So I think around 2015, we finalized version 1.1 of the schema so that it more fully aligned with the finalized version of DCAT, and also provided sort of the JSON LD mapping and sort of documentation in detail for how to provide that kind of full linked data version of the schema. And so that's now what we validate against, and we set some additional fields that are specific to the federal government and some specific requirements for federal agencies, which we don't obviously enforce for the state and local partners that voluntarily provide metadata to us. But otherwise, we do follow all that same common metadata standard that's based on DCAT.
And this is, this is just a screenshot of a separate instance of CCAN that we have. So as we mentioned, the open data policy and the requirement for agencies to maintain these metadata inventories was, was a new requirement, in the specific way that it was imposed on the agencies. And for some agencies, they didn't have a tool readily available to produce the metadata inventory following the schema that was set by the policy. So one of the things that we did was create a separate instance of CCAN that could be private, not public, and used primarily for metadata management. And the advantage of this was that for agencies that, primarily they didn't have that a large number of data sets, to have something where they could log in, just having a user account and log in, and to have something set up where there's a system that's following the schema that's already set that they could populate with their metadata and have it export the Data.json file that would be used for harvesting by the Data.gov catalog. So this is a screenshot of one of the agencies that does use inventory.data.gov as a metadata management tool. GSA is one of the agencies that use it. So if you were an agency open data lead or someone responsible for maintaining metadata for GSA or one of the dozen or so other federal agencies that uses it, this would be what you log in to manage the metadata. And the next screenshot is just the view, the admin view of, if you did log in and needed to make a change to this data set, it is, already set up with the metadata schema that's applicable and,
Yeah, and this is also just a view of one of the CCAN extensions that we've developed to align with the federal policy, the metadata schema, and so it enforces some of the kind of validation requirements and things like that within the user interface.
Okay. Take it from here.
Yeah, and then I was just going to sort of briefly mention some of the things that we have implemented and continue to develop out for kind of improving metadata quality and getting user feedback. So, we implement the QA extension that does some automated analysis on resources, check for broken links and things like that. And we also have a broken link report, which I think we have a slide of later. So I think it's building off a lot of the work on those extensions that I believe originated from the UK, Data.gov the UK. And then we also have this user feedback kind of CRM tool, which is in the upper right corner for every data set to report a problem with a data set, which could be a usability problem, or it could be a broken link, or it could be a variety of different things, and that sort of goes into a ticketing system which we track, and we have some support on our side to help triage and respond and delegate to that, but we're sort of in a more ongoing process to more deeply integrate that with leads at agencies, either into existing systems and workflows that they have, or to give them more direct access to the kind of CRM tool that we use to manage the response to that. And then you'll see there's also another blue button next to that report a data issue button, where we're trying to encourage people to tell us about how they're using the data set and sort of good use cases or data stories, which is something I think we're very much interested in doing more to help highlight, to show sort of the value that's being delivered with open data. And so you can just, this is what you get to when you're submitting a new data issue, and then you can also browse through the sort of pending and closed data issues as well, which is also all available through an API. And I think I briefly mentioned before, we implement the QA extension, some other sort of extensions to do some of the automated analysis on broken links. But it's also sort of a matter of engaging with agencies and helping to prioritize that and finding sort of potential false positives and things like that. But that's certainly an ongoing body of work that we're always sort of looking to address more effectively. Something we also started to implement, I guess a few years ago now, is schema.org metadata. So if you're not familiar with schema.org, it's a kind of created by a group of the major search engines like Google and Bing, and index and some of the other, a number of them, but to create some common metadata vocabularies for common objects, such as a person or, in this case, a data set, which builds off of the DCAT standard using the schema.org terminology. And then when you provide that markup, either as like HTML microdata in your web page or as a JSON file, that richer, more structured data can be indexed by search engines and sort of ultimately leading to more, I think, sophisticated search queries and search results. So we've been doing that, working towards sort of improving that. I don't think that there's a really good use case that I can point to in terms of how that's currently enriching search results on search engines, but I think there's heard murmurs of different sort of ways that this richer level metadata in search engines is going to sort of help people better discover and work with the raw metadata that we're making available through schema.org. So you can just sort of see through the Google Webmaster Search Console tool sort of how the search engines are able to view the structured data, the metadata that we're providing. And just here is a quick screenshot of the extensions that we have installed on our main catalog Data.gov instance, which is currently running CCAN 2.3. Our inventory instance that's more for internal use is a 2.5, I believe. And we are looking to do some substantial upgrades in the near future. But just the amount of sort of security review process that we go through each time is something that keeps us a few versions behind something when we want to be that. So we are going through with a lot of custom extensions that in part are to support a lot of the geospatial harvesting. So as per the open data policy, agencies are publishing these data.json files using this kind of DCAT-based metadata schema. But there's also actually separate requirements that would exist even longer for federal agencies to be publishing geospatial metadata in some of the common ISO standards, and there's also some legacy federal metadata standards for GIS, which we continue to support. So there's a lot of the extensions are sort of around helping to support a lot of that geospatial metadata, which, as we mentioned before, actually accounts for the majority of the data sets that are listed on Data.gov. I think we just have some screenshots of this is the waffle sort of .io board that pulls together our GitHub repositories to help us sort of triage and manage our work on pending features and bugs and processes for improving our deployment and our overall infrastructure. So we work all on the open on GitHub. The main repo where issues are tracked is under GSA Data.gov, but there's a number of other individual repos for extensions and things like that that we also work with. And then I just figured I would put together a slide here that kind of listed some high-level challenges and opportunities. It's not meant to be a conclusive list, but maybe just to help fuel some more discussion. But I think one of the sort of constant challenges is just metadata quality in terms of keeping things up to date, making sure that URLs are current and accurate, so addressing broken links. And so there's a variety of approaches that we've taken to provide automated tools and support, but it's something where I think more capacity is kind of always needed, and more to help prioritize where the capacity we have is applied. And unique identifiers is a challenge in a lot of different contexts, but I think the main one is just for the data set, the metadata entries themselves. So the policy and the sort of metadata schema requirements that we have with the Project Open Data Metadata Schema doesn't actually require a globally unique identifier for data set. It only requires it to be unique within the agency, which causes some challenges in a variety of ways. So one of the most common things is just where where it's not obvious that a metadata record, a new metadata record is actually the same one as an old one, and the old one will be overwritten, or a new one will be created, which then generates a new unique ID in CCAN. So I think there was some discussion of this from the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center folks, on the last one of these calls. That's, I think, sort of something that we are still continuing to investigate the right approach as far as enforcing globally unique identifiers or some other ways to sort of auto detect that and try and make sure that we recognize that the two metadata records may actually be the same thing. And then, yeah, I think we're always looking for better ways to highlight use cases and impacts of data sets. We're not asking people to register through Data.gov in order to access something, so we rarely, oftentimes don't really know exactly how the data is being used. That's why we encourage people to click those submit data story buttons and help highlight sort of good use cases or applications or data visualizations or tools that they've developed for the data. And I think also potentially through better ways of helping to facilitate citations with the metadata is a way that can sort of do like a thing back about how or where data sets are being used across the web. And then just in terms of opportunities, I think there's a lot of interest in us digging in deeper with lower level metadata, not just this catalog level metadata, but actually getting into something like tabular data packages or kind of machine readable data dictionaries to go along with with tabular data, and then be able to really index that with CCAN and be able to link across foreign keys and sort of link data sets that might maybe coming from different publishers, but have ways to link them or common semantics across them that we could identify through that lower level metadata. And then I think there's just a lot more we can explore with third-party integration. So we've attempted some of this in the past where we automatically let people import a data set listing on Data.gov to another tool, another platform. So we work with some data visualization platforms, hosted by third parties or mapping platforms, and I think there's a lot more to explore there. Some of the challenges I think we've had in that are due to metadata quality, for instance, broken links or things where the format or the size of the data set is not what was expected originally. That creates challenges importing that third-party service. But I think creating much more of a rich web of data sort of usage, directly from the catalog with all the different third-party tools that are being created, for data science or things like Jupyter and IPython Notebook, kinds of things like that. I think are things where there's lots of interesting opportunities for us to better directly connect some of the resources we have on Data.gov with those tools. And I think we'll leave it there for now, and get to the questions when we have time.
Thanks, Phil. Hey on. Thanks for that overview. Let me just switch and get the screen again. So yes, remember folks, if you have any questions for Phil and I know we already have some questions. I took note of them. We'll do them during the Q&A. And now let's talk Open Data Day. So quickly, you may ask, what's Open Data Day? Just reading from the OpenData.org website. It's an annual celebration of open data all over the world and it's in its 7th iteration. So people from all over the world will just create local events on the day where they will use open data in their communities. And the intent is all the outputs are open for everyone to use and reuse. So, and as with most great things, it all started with an idea about 7 years ago. If you follow good government and open data, I'm sure you know David Eves, and basically in his travels doing several conferences earlier in 2010, he found a common thread. A lot of people were asking, how do we connect with other open data advocates doing open data around the world? And that idea he just posted on an open knowledge mailing list, and before you know it, we had the first Open Data Day later that year.
So Joe, I remember Open Data Day kind of started like that, and then it was really grassroots, and then I think maybe it was about 3 years ago, the Code for America folks sort of got involved as well and helped promote it across the country.
Yeah, and now if you look at the OpenDataDay.org website, we're looking at 320 events around the world, right? And we have like 30 events alone here in the U.S. Are you doing anything in Hawaii, Bert?
Yeah, so we always want to make sure that there's a a pin that drops on Hawaii. So we're not going to do a full-on like hackathon, but we're going to do a day of open data initiatives that are going on in government. I wanted to get the folks over at the city and county to talk about What Works Cities, because we got What Works Cities started up over at the Bloomberg project over at the city and county, but they're a little I guess they're a little shy, so we didn't want to they don't want to come out and announce it yet. But we do have some folks that are doing some. We're in the legislative session right now, so we're going to be talking about some transparency and open records legislation that's going through, and then we're probably going to also talk about some transportation data, some tourism data, and then some of my colleagues over at the Department of Economic Development. So they're gonna talk about. I guess there's going to be coming up a U.S. Census effort going on. So they've been managing the U.S. Census for years. So we wanted to get them to share a little bit about what they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome, and hopefully one day I can get to join you there.
Yeah.
But here in New York City, we also have an event, and I'm also a member of the Code for America Brigade here in New York City at NYC. So they're doing a School of Data all day Saturday. They have so many workshops, and one of those workshops actually is our next topic, which is the newly relaunched U.S. City Open Data Census. Which brings me to our next speaker, Alex Dodds from the Sunlight Foundation.
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, Alex. Again, we did a quick intro at the top of the webinar. You basically just look at your LinkedIn profile. Just after the intro, maybe you can tell us more about yourself before talking about the new census.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. And Bert, I hope that dropping a pin on Honolulu is something you all will do with this project that I'm about to talk about also. My name is Alex Dodds. I'm the Open City Storyteller at the Sunlight Foundation Open Cities team. For those of you who don't know, the Sunlight Foundation advocates for open and transparent and accountable government at all levels of government, locally, nationally, and even internationally. So we're big fans of projects like Data.gov, and I want to give some props to Philip and Heon for their great work at the federal level. I'm on the cities team here, and so I work a lot with cities across the country, in part as part of the What Works Cities program that you just mentioned, helping them to pass open data policies and then put those policies into action. And Joel, if you could give me control of the cursor, I can advance these slides. Otherwise, I'm going to do that thing where I make you advance slides for me.
You have control, Alex.
Okay. Where did it go? Oh, I see. You're just going to look at my desktop. Excellent. Okay, great. You all are going to see what's going on in my life a little bit for a second here. One moment. Sorry for this is my first time using GoToWebinar, so I apologize for the technical pause. Okay. This is Baltimore City Hall. It's sort of at sunrise, so it's a symbolic image for us on the Open Cities team. So like I said, we help cities across the country pass open data policies and put them into action. And one of the ways that we do that is through a project that I'm going to talk about today called the U.S. City Open Data Census. And some of you might already be familiar with this. It's a project that we've done in collaboration with Open Knowledge International. And it is what aims to be a very complete inventory of open data sets in cities across the country. This project started in 2014 in partnership with Code for America, and just recently, I think at the very beginning of February, we relaunched it on a brand new platform. It was, 4 years old at that point, so it needed to be rebuilt. And the new site includes a bunch of new features. So even if you have filled out information about open data in your city or a different city before, you can visit the site, and we've improved the way that it works and some of the functionality and the questions. So really the purpose of the site, before I get into those details, are threefold. One is that it benchmarks what data is available in cities across the country. So if you look at the top, these are all different data sets, and one of the big purposes of this project is to help anyone in a city understand which of those data sets are available in their city. The second way that this site is really valuable is by making those data sets explicit, these different types of data. It creates kind of a wish list or a bucket list for what cities should be releasing. We've heard from a lot of city staff that they use this as sort of a checklist of things that they should be striving towards. Even if they don't release these data sets right now, they recognize that the value and they work towards making sure that they make all of these data sets available. And the third is that it really helps cities understand how they compare to one another. As I mentioned, we're part of What Works Cities, and one of the big parts of that project is sort of what I would call collegial competition. So helping cities understand what other places are doing and how to bring those ideas back to their own city. It's one of the great things about the community of cities that's part of the What Works Cities program. People learn from each other, recognize that they could be doing better, and they sort of steal ideas and bring them back to their own hometown. And if you don't believe me that this competition is collegial, this is some of the chatter that was going on when we relaunched the census back at the beginning of February. We heard open data managers in a bunch of different cities sort of saying that they were number one, or that they were going to get their data up there first, their information up there first. It takes some time. We run the census all year long, so even though one city might be up at the top right now, it changes as people add their information, and we are continually adding to it throughout the year. So this kind of friendly banter is always really fun to watch, and one of the great parts of this project is seeing how cities look at each other and see what each other is doing and sort of encourage each other to do better, which is really great. So let me tell you a little bit more about the details of the site. It collects information about 20 data sets: budget, crime reports, construction permits, parcel zoning. You can see the full list here. And these are sort of the most commonly released data sets that cities make available. It is not a complete list, but this is sort of, we would call it sort of the big 20, that these are sort of like the baseline. These are the 20 data sets that your city should be releasing at a minimum. This list of 20 includes several changes from the last iteration of the site. 3 data sets are no longer included: asset disclosure, campaign finance contributions, and transit information. Asset disclosure and campaign finance contributions in particular are incredibly valuable, and I want to say that right up front. We believe that these data sets should be made public. The reason that all 3 of them are not included on the city census is because they're usually not under the control of a city to make public or not. So it didn't make sense to us to hold cities accountable for data that they don't have control over. We also added 4 new data sets: emergency calls, employee salaries for public employees, and police use of force and traffic crashes. And those last 2 data sets in particular were a direct result of some of the big social issue conversations that have been going on in cities over the last several years, notably the Vision Zero work toward zero traffic and pedestrian fatalities, as well as police bias. And we want to encourage cities as best we can to release open data about those issues. So we encourage people to fill out information for 214 cities. You can read them all here. There's going to be a test about it at the end of my presentation. I hope you memorize very quickly. These are some of the biggest cities in the country, as well as all of our participant What Works cities members. If your city is on here, great. We encourage you to go to the census and fill out the entry for your city. If your city is not on this list, we can add it. Just contact the site administrators on the website, and you can we can add any city. If you have a open data program and are publishing open data and want to have that reflected on the census, by all means, drop us a line, and we'll add your city there. So obviously, the next big effort is to fill all the cities. There are some cities that are really eager and have already entered information about all 20 of the data sets that we track, but there are many, many cities. This is a real screenshot of just blank entries, and there's many cities in the country for which there's currently no information. So we, over the next several months, the team at the Open Cities team at Sunlight is working to get information filled for all of the cities that we can. We're talking with Code for America brigades in cities. We're talking with city staff and encouraging them to enter information. And to make it a little bit more fun, this Saturday, as part of Open Data Day, we're going to be hosting a Fill-a-thon in DC, New York, and on Google Hangout. So anyone, anywhere can join. If you're in DC, I'll be there Saturday from 1 to 4 at Open.gov Hub. My colleagues Stephen and Greg will be up in New York for the School of Data that Joel mentioned earlier in the program. And then if you are in a city that is not one of those two places, we'll be coming together on Google Hangout, and we would encourage you to join us. You can go to that bit.ly link, sunlight.odd, to find out, to register for all three of those. Otherwise, we encourage you to go to the census, fill it out, check it out, share it with people in your city, and keep in touch with Sunlight Cities. You can learn more on our website or follow us on Twitter. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. I guess I know what I'll be doing this weekend.
Yeah, I hope to see you there. Or
yeah.
Honolulu is proud to be last on the list. So we want to keep our census basically blank.
If you say so, I don't know. I think there's some good stuff going on over there. You guys probably 1 p.m. Eastern is not too early Honolulu time, right? You guys could join us on the Google Hangout.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll definitely share that out. I wanted to. Well, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves in terms of Q&A, but I did want to ask you. When I was looking at the list, when I was at the city, I was looking at the list, with great interest, and I was prepared to maybe fill in the data sets for campaign spending and the transit stuff. But then now that it's taken off, and I'm now over at the state, I guess there is really no corresponding census for state managed data.
Yeah, so we partner with the Open Knowledge International, like I mentioned, to run this, and they run a number of different censuses. So the U.S. City Open Data Census is just information about the U.S. cities. That's not to say that there couldn't be a census about state open data or any number of different categories of open data and who makes it available. You can talk to Open Knowledge International about creating a new census iteration of your own if you're interested.
Great. Can I ask you real quickly, like what I guess you did an update back in February, just last month. Was it the same platform? What was it that you wanted to really upgrade to make it more functional, visual? What was the motivation?
Yeah, so it was actually our partners at Open Knowledge who run this same platform powers a number of different censuses. As I just mentioned, there's all different kinds, international censuses, all different kinds of open data censuses. It was they were the ones who, I think it was mostly for technical reasons, they improved the way the the flow of the questions that you answer for each of the data sets. For each of the data sets, you have to answer several different questions about how often, how frequently the data is updated, whether it has a certain number of attributes. For each data set, it's a little bit different. So they made improvements to that. There was also improvements made to the way that entries get added. In the previous version of the census, users would submit, an addition to the site, and it would get held for review by a site administrator before it was posted. And we've shifted to direct posting. So now if you add information about the site, it'll appear right away, which is, I think, in line with our work on openness and transparency. So we're really excited about that, to have stuff update in real time and be able to, sort of tap people's work more directly.
Great. So maybe later I'll send you an email, and maybe you can put me in touch with the folks over at Open Knowledge International that's working on the surveys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Alex, for that great overview. And now, before we go to the Q&A, that's one thing that Bert and I wanted to announce and alluded to earlier. So we're announcing that we'll hold the first CCANCon US. It will be the day before CFA Summit in Oakland, May 29, and the event page is not up yet, but you should see it by next week. Just check out discuss@okfn.org. We'll have a call for presentations, and we look forward to getting presentations from all cities doing open data. Even though it says CCANCon, it's really more about open data and all things open knowledge. So looking forward to it. So now let's go to Q&A. So I have a few questions here. Let me go to the questions that we have from the attendees. So one question we have from Albert Bowden for the Data.gov team. Aside from obvious federal and state differences, has there been any interest by states to port Data.gov?
So was that to fork Data.gov? What was that? I didn't quite catch the last part.
So yeah, it says, aside from obvious federal and state differences, has there been any interest by states to fork Data.gov to basically maybe do a state level Data.gov using Data.gov code? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we're leveraging the existing open source work around CCAN to power our platform, and we have done some custom extensions and things like that, which are also open source. And so there are, state and local data catalogs that are powered by a variety of different data catalog platforms, including CCAN. I'm trying to think through, just off the top of my head, which of any of those are using any of the custom extensions that we've developed. I think, I could be wrong about this, but I believe maybe Philadelphia, the sort of Open Data Philly CCAN catalog may be using some of the extensions that we have for generating the data.json file. I don't hold me to that, but I think that there have been conversations with some other state and local CCAN instances about implementing some of those extensions. And the main reason, in that case, for using that data.json extension would be to help syndicate their catalog up through our catalog. But but for the most part, the code base that we're really working from is is already part of the broader open source CCAN community. So in some cases, it's maybe more a question of whether state and local governments are interested in using CCAN just in general, and then from there maybe a question of which extensions that we've developed or other customizations that we've developed they might want to leverage.
And I have a follow-up question there too, Phil. So during your presentation,
just to finish that out, there actually are much, I think, better examples within the federal government of federal agencies using a lot of the, because in the federal government we have a lot of more specific sort of constraints and requirements around deploying these types of platforms. So there certainly are a number of examples within the federal government of redeploying our code base and a lot of the specific things that we've customized.
You, in your wrap-up, you mentioned something along the lines of, opportunities that you were thinking of linking data, not maybe in the academic sense, not linked data, but is there anything being done in terms of And I can't help but think, when Alex was showing the metadata they're collecting, and right now it's human-powered, you know, census filling out those forms. Is there any collaboration, perhaps, that maybe Project Open Data can start, getting a lot more low-level metadata about the data set? So you can say, oh, this is a crime data set. This is a parcel data set.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the specific GitHub issue that, kind of the running notes on this topic. I mean, one area where there's been, I think, some discussion and collaboration is there's a kind of a government CCAN working group that's international. So there's like a monthly call that's hosted among different government entities, multiple, oftentimes the main participants are from Canada, the United States, basically English-speaking countries, UK, Canada, US, but Mexico and a number of other countries have participated in the past. And this is a topic that often comes up there, and I know that the CCAN catalog for the government of British Columbia in Canada has done a bit of experimenting with incorporating some of that lower level metadata, where they're they have sort of an extension or some ETL sort of processes that are pulling some of that lower level metadata directly from different database systems and indexing it into the Solr with the CCAN. So I think there's some precedents like that, and then I think there have been some more recent features in CCAN that might support some of this stuff more natively. I'm just going to see if I could reference the so it's issue 640 on the Data.gov GitHub repo, which kind of discusses this topic, and then mentions, I think some of the data dictionary feature in CCAN 2.7, I believe, sort of going in a similar direction. I don't know if we linked to that British Columbia example in here, but oh yeah, we do. I think, yeah, there's some example of links there. So I would refer to that issue 640 for sort of more detailed links on that topic. But I think it's just sort of a feature that we've been interested in tracking for a while.
Great. We'll be sure to take note of it when we post the slide on the forum. I have another question here from Liliana Martinez. It goes, I believe it's addressed to, let's see who is addressed to. I think it is addressed to Alex. From your experience, what have you seen more often in the cities that participate in open data initiatives? Do they usually implement a whole data governance program or just a single open data policy?
It usually starts with a policy, and the policy establishes the program. So can I say both? Usually it just starts with a policy saying that the city will begin making data open and available online. And that's usually a step-by-step process. I know most cities start with trying to figure out the technical nuts and bolts of how to not only publish data, but even how to get the data from different city departments into the same place. You can go to our website, sunlightfoundation.com/open-cities. There's tons of information there about how your city can pass an open data policy. We have template language. We have sort of a Mad Libs, fill in the blank policy wizard, which can create a really quick policy that you can start from. And we also have a bunch of guidance about all of the different considerations to take into that cities can consider when starting to think about this.
Okay. And this is a follow-up to that, Alex. Are you thinking about, like the question I asked of Phil earlier in terms of taking the census further? I think the next logical extension of that is benchmarking from this collegial competition to actually using that data to start specifying perhaps the schema of the data set so you can compare apples to apples.
To say who's releasing the data in the best format?
Yeah, because maybe they're releasing it as a PDF and they say, oh, I released the crime data as a PDF file.
Well, to be clear, so the Open City Census asks about format, and they ask about frequency of updates. And like I said, it differs a little bit depending on which data set you're referring to. But a PDF is not one of the options for the format that you can select. So if it has to be in a machine readable format, and it also has to, we include the open definition, and it has to adhere to those standards also. So there is some nuance, actually. The questions, there's probably about 10 or 15 questions that get asked for each of those 20 data sets. And so there is nuance, and you'll see that even if you fill out, you know, you can get it's a percentage score. So cities can make the same data set available, but get different scores if they release it in, you know, a wider variety of formats, or if they update it more frequently, or, you know, all these different variables. So it's not a yes or no. It's not a yes or no question.
Okay, that's good to know. And
hey,
just
Joel,
to be
Joel, I'm sorry to interrupt. I see some people outside the conference room we're in, so we must be getting kicked out of our room.
Okay, Heon, thank you again for your time. Thanks again. I think we'll have to wrap up with top of the hour. One last thing before we wrap up, though, is we want to announce that the next webinar we'll have Sunlight again with an expanded presentation talking about Sunlight Open Cities and supporting community use of open data. So we look forward to that. And once again, we'll have a lot more information about CCANCon US at the discuss.okfn.org forum, and hopefully see you next time. Bert, any parting words?
I just want to say thanks to Phil and Juan and Alex for joining us, and thank you, Joel, for doing such a great job pulling the whole webinar together and getting everybody organized to participate. Really appreciate the work that you put into this.
It takes a team and all the great content from everybody. Thanks again, everyone.